Hello again, everybody. I'm Ms. Shepherd. I'm very happy to be back. I hope you are doing all right. We've heard that certainly New Lisbon and Columbia are having many cases. It looks from the data I've seen that Fox Lake is doing much better. I hope that's still the case, and I hope that things are improving at Fox Lake and Columbia, and that you are safe and practicing. We're glad to be here. I'm here with Ms. Ross again. I'll let her say hello.
Hello, everybody. Just as always, been thinking about you and wishing you well, hoping that your practice is helping me stay as sane as possible during these crazy times, and just grateful to be able to be back here again. So nice to see you.
So today we are recording on Wednesday, October the 21st, and today is the Buddhist Service. So we're glad you're with us here for the Buddhist Service. We will run it as we have in the past. We'll do a chant. I think we'll go back to the chant we had done a while before. We'll sort of switch around and do different chants. I think today we'll do the chant on universal well-being that we've done before. And then we'll have a guided meditation and then a conversation. And depending on timing, we might have another brief guided meditation. So I will go and light the candles and incense, and then we'll do the chant.
So we'll be chanting the Reflections on Universal Well-Being. If you have a chant book, it's on page 26, but the words are up on the screen. Now let us chant the Reflections on Universal Well-Being. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be the heirs.
So gently closing your eyes or softening your gaze if your eyes remain open. And settling into the body. Just as best as you are able, moving the intention, the attention, internal. Getting a sense of what's happening right now for this body and heart. Receiving the information from the body and the mind, but not thinking about it. Just receiving it the way you receive a ray of sun coming through a window. Giving yourself plenty of time to notice, experience, receive whatever might be happening in this body, in this moment. Softening and opening the relationship to the body. So it's not a forced kind of relationship. It's not a grasping. The meditation isn't about getting. We're not getting peaceful. We're not getting calm. Those are all pretty much grasping kinds of attitudes based on greed, basically. This is a receiving of experience as it is. Allowing the heart to be open to receive whatever is present in the body right now. Settling the attention either just in a bodily location or maybe with the breath. Not worrying about any specific technique. Just trying to be as present and available to receive whatever is happening right now. To be receptive without reactivity. That requires willingness, willing to receive whatever is present right now. Perhaps settling on the gentle rhythm of the in-breath and the out-breath. Seeing if you can be willing just to rest right there. Resting your awareness on the breath as it comes in and as it goes out. Again and again. Over and over. Not needing it to be any different than it is. Really making friends with the body. being interested and curious. How does this breath really impact the body? How does the body impact the breath? If you become aware of an area of the body that's tense or tight, maybe it can be released, relaxed. You might see if on the next exhalation, as you exhale, consider releasing that tension along with the breath. Might even intentionally lengthen the exhalation to allow that tightened area to fully release. Each exhalation can be a further relaxation, a further release. Having a sense of just being with the body. Almost as if the body is maybe a sick friend. And you're just sitting at their bedside. Just being present with them. You don't need to chat. You don't need to entertain them. You're just there as a kind, open, accepting presence. See about relating to your own body in that same way. Just breathing in and breathing out. Maybe even having a sense of becoming the breath itself. No longer external in any sense. It's becoming fully connected with the breath and with the body. Letting any thoughts or memories or plans just drop into the background. Not allowing yourself to pick them up or follow them. You might notice them if they arise, sort of like a wisp in the air. But you don't need to grab onto them. Just let them dissolve or rest in the background. You stay present with the breath, the body, fully embodied. Keeping things as simple as you can. Not complicating with worries about, am I doing it right, or what should I do now? Letting all of that drop away. Just being. Just sitting. Nothing else is required. Noticing any sort of agitating or concerning thoughts that arise. Knowing them just as thoughts. Not needing to follow them. Not needing to believe them. Not needing to buy into them. Returning to staying with the breath. With the simplicity of breathing in and breathing out. We're often quite good at complicating things. In your meditation, it can be really useful to simplify. To notice the way the mind complicates and to not follow it. Instead, staying with the simplicity of just experiencing bodily sensation, experiencing the breath. And all that other stuff drops away. The breath is quite simple. Present. I hope your practice has been a great support to you over these months. It has been many months already. And what I thought I might talk about today is loss, because there certainly has been a great deal of it in the nation as a whole, and perhaps for you as well. All of you have had loss in terms of freedom already, because you are there and your freedom is quite constrained. So that's clearly a kind of loss. But all humans, all beings, do have loss in their life. And learning how we might work with loss, how we might understand loss, how we might sort of contextualize loss, I think is a big part of this practice, a big part of what the Buddha taught. Because in our general culture, in our popular culture, in our Hallmark and Hollywood version of life, there's not supposed to be loss. And sometimes we grow up thinking that that's the way life is. And these losses that occur are my fault or my problem or that something's gone wrong. When in fact, loss is a fundamental part of all human life. It's not, there's nothing that's gone wrong in the sense of unusual or surprising. It is the nature of what we all face and will face, every single human being. And so getting some sense of the normalness of loss, I think, can help us a great deal in not getting overwhelmed when it happens and in having some clarity, some wisdom, some reality that helps us manage it, helps us not become overwhelmed and knocked about by what are actually quite usual losses. That is not to say that these losses aren't difficult or painful, but they can become slightly less painful, slightly less hard to bear, if we don't think that they're unusual or that they're my problem, that it's because I did something wrong. So there's a teaching that the Buddha gave about loss. And in this teaching, he says, and I'll share it with you in just a minute, but in this teaching, he suggests, he recommends that we reflect on these sorts of losses every day, all the time, in order to really take it in, so that we don't get bamboozled by the Hallmark and Hollywood view of things that makes us believe that these things aren't supposed to happen, that these things only happen to somebody else for some other reason. When in fact, we all experience these sorts of losses, all humans. It's part of being a human being that loss in these sorts of ways will happen. So this teaching is called the 5 Subjects for Frequent Recollection, because that's what the Buddha said we should do. We should reflect on this frequently. And the purpose of reflecting on this frequently is so that when these things do happen, as they will to everyone, not just because we're incarcerated or we're not incarcerated, but because the nature of being a human being means we will have loss, that when we reflect on these things frequently, then when they do happen, we have a framework. We know, oh, there it is. Yeah, I was told this sort of stuff would happen, and here it is. Oh, okay. Not what I would have chosen, not what I ordered, but pretty expectable, pretty normal. Like hair turning gray, right? I mean, if nobody had ever told me that when you age, your hair turns gray, and then suddenly I started noticing my hair changing color, it would have been pretty weird. I would have thought, oh my gosh, what's happening? But of course, I knew that this was totally normal, totally what happens. So it just was what happened, not at all a problem. So these things can be less problematic for us in that way. So let me put up this teaching, and then we'll talk a little bit more. So before I put it up, let me just say one more thing. So sometimes when people hear this teaching, or maybe my worry, probably unfounded worry, sometimes is that people will go, yikes. But in fact, what's actually happens much more common is people go, that's sort of soothing. It's sort of relieving. It's sort of like, oh, thank goodness. That's really helpful to realize that. So I hope that'll be your response, not the, oh my God, this is awful kind of response. So let me put it up and then we can talk more. I'm going to try to move it here. So this is oftentimes done as a chant. We're not going to do it as a chant today, but it frequently is done as a chant. And as I said, it's called this 5 Subjects for Frequent Recollection. And I'll recite it here, and then we can talk more. So it is, I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. None of those things would be alien to me. All that is mine, beloved, pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me, right? We cannot hold on to things we love. I am the owner of my action, heir to my action, born of my action, related to my action, abide supported by my actions. Whatever actions I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. Thus we should frequently recollect. So maybe I'll leave it up for a bit more while I talk. So the idea here is to recognize the first three have to do with living in a human body. Recognizing that as the resident, the renter, really, the tenant in this human body, it will age, it will sicken, and it will die. That there is no way that those things won't happen. When they happen, they are not a surprise. They are to be expected. They are actually the normal cycle of how things operate. I remember the first time I heard this, I was kind of like, wow, that's really interesting. And I was thinking on it. And then like a week later or so, I got a cold. I was still working at that time. And I woke up one morning and I clearly had a cold and I felt rotten. And I had all kinds of things at work I was supposed to do that day. And I remember getting really irritated and angry. But, why do I have a cold and it's terrible timing and I shouldn't have a cold and it's no fair and on and on. And then I remembered this chant. Oh, I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. And it was like, oh yeah, this isn't, a personal mistake I've made. This is going to happen. And it's not, the timing isn't going to be up to me. I'm not going to know when I get sick or when I don't get sick. This is just the way it is. And it was actually an enormous relief. It no longer made the cold the problem that I had made it. I still had a cold. It still wasn't great. Still made it harder at work that day. But it wasn't this sort of personal problem, this sort of, it wasn't something to fight against. It was just bodies get sick. Humans get sick. I got sick. It just normalized things in such a helpful way. And I think it's continued to do that over the years as I've reflected on this teaching. And then the next line, all that's mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. To realize that not only will we lose things in our own body, but we will lose what we love. That if we love it, we need to enjoy it and appreciate it and feel grateful, knowing that it is unknown how long we might have a relationship in that way, whether it's a physical thing itself or a person. And that now is our opportunity to be grateful for the people we love and to be there for them in whatever way we can, whether that's through writing letters or phone calls if those are available, or email if that's available, or even just keeping them in our hearts, just bringing them to mind. That is also a way to express our gratitude. Realizing that things will change. And then the final part, perhaps the most important, speaks about what do we do about this? And what we do about it is notice that our opportunity to live our life happens only in this very moment right now. And that how we live it, moment by moment, is what shapes the future moments. That whatever actions we do right now, for good or for ill, that's what we inherit. That's what comes, that's what we will live with in the coming moments. That's what we inherit is really the best word. And keeping that in mind, hopefully is a help to recognize the importance of what we do, that what we do truly matters, and that it matters not only for the people we care about, but for ourselves. It matters in terms of our own self-confidence and in terms of how we are with other people and for other people. So let me drop this. So in terms of working with loss, I think it is useful to remember that loss happens. That we don't, sometimes we get what we want and sometimes we don't. And to bring a sense of patience, always patience, of persistence, to keep at whatever we feel is important without an expectation that it's going to always produce the consequences that we wish for. When it does, we can rejoice and feel satisfied and happy. And when it doesn't, we don't give up. We don't despair. We just try again. We keep at it. And our heroes are models for doing that. I saw an amazing interview with Brian Stevenson the other day. I so wish that there'd be a way I could show it for all of you. It was so incredibly beautiful and inspiring. And in the interview, he actually, so Brian Stevenson, you may well know, is a lawyer who represents people on death row who have been charged and seem to be innocent, charged inaccurately. And he, in this interview, he was asked about some of his heroes, and he named one of his heroes was a man that he had represented that was eventually freed. But that freeing took 30 years. He was prosecutor trying to overturn these charges for 30 years. And yet this man, who is now out and was speaking during part of the interview, clearly had a way of working with loss, because there were, of course, there was the original trial and then many appeals and trials until eventually, 30 years later, he was released. So that was quite inspiring to me, to remember that, right now, in a time of a presidential election, 4 years seems like forever. If the person we're supporting doesn't win, it seems like 4 more years, or 4 years of whoever it is that we want or don't want, seems like an eternity. And yet when you compare that to this other man who was persistent and faithful and patient, and yet diligent still, for 30 years, It puts it in perspective. Okay, maybe we can remember that this isn't what we want, but maybe we can keep at it. Or if we get what we want, we can be grateful for that, but know that other losses will come. Well, there'll be other things that we won't get that we want. So this teaching is really just, in some ways, it really is a sort of a summary of wisdom and patience. Wisdom being seeing things truthfully. I also think of this in terms of COVID, that it seems to me that so much of the problem our country is facing was really a denial of seeing the truth that there is this virus and that it's incredibly contagious and incredibly dangerous. And somehow we couldn't take that in as a nation. We pretended it wasn't the case, and we are now suffering the consequences of not seeing clearly. Our practice is so much about seeing the truth, whether or not it's what we want, that it's very easy to believe, if I don't want this to be happening, I'm just going to pretend it's not happening, and then maybe that'll make the difference. And it never, ever, ever works. The only thing that works is seeing things as they are, because then we have the information we need to know what to do. That's science. That's data. That's just wisdom. So I've gone on a bit. So this teaching is in your chant book. If you have the chant book, I was going to look at the page. I didn't check the page.
Page 23.
Thank you. So it's on page 23. Thank you, Ms. Ross. So and I think it can absolutely be a wonderful teaching that just to recite frequently, it just really helps us get some grounding about the true facts of what it is to live a human life. But with that, let me hear any thoughts Ms. Ross might have.
Well, thanks, Ms. Shepherd. This is always an important topic, and it's a topic that nobody wants to deal with because it's so un-American. Our whole culture makes us want to be in denial that we can't fix things, right? We'll buy the next thing that's going to make us happy, and we'll buy the ads for drugs on TV for whatever the next drug is. It's going to fix whatever your medical problem is or whatever. And so all of this, the one that really was astounding to me, I was reading a book called Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. He works with patients at the end of their life. And he said, doctors, when their patient dies, the doctor takes it as a failure in their practice. But the patient is always ultimately going to die, right? But even doctors are in denial about their capabilities. So we have a whole culture that's in denial. And the Buddha, he's totally countercultural, and he was in his time too. But he's a realist, and when we can face reality, it just makes it easier to deal with, because reality is what it is. And if we're in denial about it, when reality, we keep bumping up against reality, it continues to be painful. And this doesn't mean that we have to just curl up and die, it's not telling us to be a doormat, but it's to face up to what's really going on with clarity, without emotion, without feeling defeated, without feeling like it's my fault that I'm sick, or my fault that this person is reacting weird towards me or whatever, or this person doesn't seem to like me anymore. Trying to understand that this is the situation, be able to be there with clarity so that we truly can see what's going on, as Ms. Shepherd was talking about. And that the last part, the promise in this teaching, the silver lining is our actions, right? If we can see things with clarity, see things how they really are, it doesn't make us powerless. this last part of the teaching, I'm owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born in my karma, whatever karma I do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. So it gives us the ability to choose our actions from a place of clarity. If we can be calm and clear, we can choose an action that might decrease our suffering or the suffering of whoever we happen to be with. And then we can keep monitoring. We can keep paying attention. Like, was that helpful or not? And if it was helpful, then maybe we can do more of that. And if it wasn't, we can go, okay, maybe I didn't quite get the whole thing. And again, not thinking that we can totally fix everything, but is there a way just to bring more ease? You know, there's always going to be some pain in the world. It's not constant, but there's always going to be something. And then the question is, how can I be with this? And then maybe, is there something I can do? And if there's nothing I can do, can I still be here with calm and clarity? This shepherd used in the meditation, the metaphor of, observing our body like sitting with a sick friend. Sometimes we can do something, and sometimes all we can do is just be present and have that presence be as comforting as possible. So just trying to see, is there something I can do or not? If not, can I be okay with this? Because this is the nature of things. This is how nature is. And those of you who are incarcerated, you're not in touch with nature all the time, but I've been walking in the woods and watching leaves falling off of trees and insects crawling slowly as they're moving towards dying, and whatever. That's why the Buddha taught about being, remembering nature, and they practiced in nature. And even if you're not in nature, you can remember those kinds of things, just seeing that loss is part of nature, and humans aren't above that. And it's not morbid, it's just how it is. And but the question is, how are we relating to it? And are we adding to the suffering by resisting it, by struggling against it, by reacting against it, getting angry? Or can we be from a place of calm and support ourselves and others? And that's where our karma, our action, really matters. And we do this frequent recollection because everything else in our culture tells us not to remember this. And we do this reminder as part of our practice so that we do stay in touch with reality, and it allows us to be calm and better able to cope with it. And that's been my experience. And as much as I resisted this teaching initially, I've really come, the older I get, now that I'm well past 60, it's like every day it's more and more important to remember all this. So just encourage you to practice with it, do it with curiosity. Like, if you feel the resistance, just sit with that resistance and notice the stress that's coming from that. And if you can just kind of breathe into that and be present, like, oh, not liking this is like this. The not liking is like this. But is that gonna kill me? Maybe not. Play with that. So that's how I kind of, a few thoughts.
Thank you. Yeah. I guess I just add a couple of things that I want to make sure as I'm thinking about it. So one is, this is not meant to be a depressive kind of thing. It's not meant to go, the world is awful and just give up. It's absolutely meant to be the opposite, to say, this is the nature of the world. Now, what do I do? Now, how do I act? And sort of related to this. So it's not to say that, oh, well, it doesn't matter that 215,000 people have died. That's just the nature of the world. That's not at all what it's saying. It's actually saying, wow, look, 215,000 of our, members, our national community have died. To take that in and to generate compassion, to think, oh my goodness, what can I do? How can I bring compassion in response to this? It's not saying that the loss doesn't count or that the loss isn't important. It's saying to realize there's loss and then know how do I support the people who are experiencing that loss, who now have that big hole in their hearts from these losses? Because this is my chance to do it right now. This is when I can act in response to what's really happening. Whereas if we don't do that and we pretend that, oh, well, nothing's happened, that's cruelty in my mind, right? Not acknowledging the fact that we have had these enormous numbers of losses. That's heartless. Compassion is acknowledging it, saying, oh my goodness, this is terrible. I am so sorry for these losses. Imagine what 215,000 people might have offered to our world had they been able to continue to live, the goodness they could have brought. And so then that opens our hearts, that allows us to act with compassion, to decide, okay, in this moment, I want to make sure that if I have a friend who I know has lost someone, I speak of it. I don't make them feel they have to pretend nothing's happened when something very significant for them has indeed happened. So again, just to, I think that, as Ms. Ross was saying, sort of the cultural model is talking about these things as depressing or morbid or discouraging. But in fact, it's not. Not talking about these things is cruel and ignorant and denial. So this teaching says we need to acknowledge the losses that happen in our life, but not be overwhelmed or despairing about them. Recognize that they are painful and consider what can we do in response to them that might help our own suffering and maybe someone else's as well. So as we always say, we'd love to hear from you. So if you have thoughts on this teaching or questions about it, we'd love to hear and be able to maybe continue the conversation and to hear how this sits with you, because I certainly do not want it to sit with you as a way that adds suffering to your life. I certainly hope it hasn't done that, because that is never, ever our intention. So I think we have a few more minutes, maybe a brief meditation, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, Ms. Ross. Feels like a topic that could benefit from another meditation.
Yeah. Okay, so we could start the meditation by just shifting our intention from listening to going back into the receptive mode, like the first meditation that we did, and we'll use the sound of the bell to transition us from listening and thinking and feeling to just receiving the sound of the bell. And as it fades, coming in going more internal, again, closing the eyes or having a soft gaze, and just feel how the mind and the body are right now. Is there calm or is there agitation? Are we feeling tension in the body, or does the body feel relaxed? How's the breath? Do we feel the heartbeat? So all of what we're experiencing right now is the leftover reaction to this topic that we've been talking about, and we can feel how our own heart and our own mind have responded. So just take that in. Noticing if there's tension, notice if the mind is still spinning about something that was disturbing or inspiring. Just noticing it, not trying to change, but just receiving these impressions, the senses in the body, tension or ease, thoughts in the mind, or just relaxed awareness. How is it right now? And maybe noticing as you're observing that just through this act of observing, things keep changing. Maybe the thoughts lose a little bit of their energy as you're changing your attention towards just being with whatever the body sensations are right now. So the chatter in the mind may be subsiding. Or we may feel the body calming down, maybe even getting sleepy if it was stimulated by all the thoughts. Just notice the changing nature of this experience as the mind receives these sensations from the body, as it sees the changing nature of thought. So receiving with non-reactive awareness, constant change in the body and in the mind. Just noticing how it is. How is the body right now? How is the mind right now? Are we holding on to something? And if we are, how does that feel in the body and the mind? Is it a thought or a body sensation we're holding on to? What does that feel like? Or if we've just let go into receptive awareness, watching things come and go, maybe we can feel a little bit of ease, relaxation. Whatever we're experiencing, this is how it is. We can use our power of observation, this curious mind, to better understand how our mind becomes reactive, how our body responds. Seeing this cause and effect as thoughts, emotions, sensations create these feelings in the body and the mind, and how they can move over time. Constant exploration to better understand ourselves better, to try to learn how to relate with our experience with more calm and more ease, less reactivity. This is how it is right now. Can this be okay?
Thank you so much, Ms. Ross. And with that, I think we need to end the session. Our thoughts and hearts go out to all of you. May your practice continue to be a support for yourself and for all those you know. Ms. Ross?
Yeah. Take care of yourself, keep practicing, support each other as best you can. We're thinking of you. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Take care.